Hello, everyone. Paul Mancano from the Banner Ravens podcast here with you. Now, we're recording this episode on Thursday, January 30th. And as you probably guessed from the title, this episode will focus on an investigative report from the Baltimore Banner about allegations that star kicker Justin Tucker engaged in inappropriate behavior at four high end spas and wellness centers in the Baltimore region early in his Ravens career. Now, just a warning, this podcast draws directly from the reporting in our story, and it contains graphic descriptions that may not be suitable for some listeners. According to six massage therapists who worked on Tucker from 2012 to 2016 and spoke to Banner reporters over the past month, Tucker exposed his genitals, brushed two of them with his exposed penis, and after three treatments, left what they believed to be ejaculate on the massage table. Several of the therapists said Tucker's behavior was so egregious that they ended his sessions early or refused to work on him again. At two spas, management said they banned him from returning. Tucker's attorneys have denied the allegations, calling them, quote, false, end quote, and, quote, spurious, end quote. They say Tucker was never banned from the spas and that all of the therapist claims about his behavior were speculative and unfair. They also deny that Tucker ever ejaculated at a spa. After the story was published, a Ravens spokesman told the Banner that they, quote, take any allegations of this nature seriously and will continue to monitor the situation, end quote. An NFL spokesman said the league will look into the matter. Tucker released a lengthy statement on X after the story was published, denying the allegations and criticizing the Banner's reporting process. The statement read, in part, quote, I have always made a conscious effort to be considerate and respectful in all the interactions with the community that I love so much. It is devastating for me to learn that anyone would feel I was offensive in any way, end quote. Now, later in this episode, co-host Jonas Shaffer and I will discuss what these allegations could mean for Tucker's career. But first, an interview with the Banner's reporters who authored this story. And now we're joined on the Banner Ravens podcast by enterprise reporter Julie Scharper and investigative reporters Brenna Smith and Justin Fenton. Guys, thanks so much for joining me. Let's start with Justin. How was the Banner first made aware of these allegations against Justin Tucker?
Yeah, in early January, someone that I know contacted me and said that they were getting their haircut at a barber shop in Baltimore County, and that people were talking about how they had information about Justin Tucker acting inappropriately during massages. I didn't really know what to do with a tip like this, so first thing we did was go on social media and just plug in his name and massage, and we were, I think, taken aback to see that there was several tweets where people were apparently talking about this. It wasn't clear how they knew or whether they were just repeating rumors or gossip, but it's something we didn't expect to see being sort of talked about like that. And so we thought we should dig a little deeper. Again, I still didn't know really where to start, and that's where we brought in my colleague Julie.
And Julie, how did the reporting
So,
unfold from there?
sure. So I looked at some of those social media posts, tried reaching out to folks, and one person got back to me and actually shared screenshots that an acquaintance of his had posted to Facebook back in 2022, alleging that she had had this type of experience with Tucker. I messaged that person, and I was able to reach her. I interviewed her. She was very eager to tell her story. We found several other folks who said that, yes, she told them about this at the time. And from there, we began to identify other high-end spas and wellness centers where there were reports that these alleged actions had taken place. We used LinkedIn, Facebook, and sort of tried to figure out who was working there at that time. And we slowly began to find additional people who had similar reports. In one case, I called one individual to corroborate a former colleague's story, and she actually even told me about yet another person who I wound up contacting who had a story about a different spa.
And Julie, did you find any pattern in terms of the alleged behavior in your reporting?
Yes. So the six women that we spoke with, it talked about a variety of behaviors that they found inappropriate. And we definitely saw that there were similarities, that most of these women did not know each other. Two of them were former colleagues, but the others had worked at different establishments or different times. And what we found was that there were indeed similar behaviors that people alleged that he did during their massages with him.
And for people who are reading the story, they notice immediately that the massage therapists in the story are referred to by a letter in their name and not their full name. Julie, would you mind just explaining why that is?
Yes, the women were very aware that they were making allegations against someone who is beloved in Baltimore, who is, very famous, certainly a public figure, someone who has a lot of status and wealth as a member of the Ravens, and really a star. So they were fearful of retaliation, whether that meant from the team or people associated with the team, or retaliation from fans who might be upset to read these types of accounts.
Now, Brenna, these allegations are from 2012, which is Tucker's rookie season, until 2016. Why didn't the women come forward sooner or report these allegations to law enforcement?
Yeah, I mean, first off, the women told us that they were traumatized by these alleged events. And, they also didn't quite know what to do. Though they said they felt like this was highly inappropriate behavior, they didn't know if what he allegedly did was technically illegal. And, they also remembered what happened to some of the women that came forward during the Deshaun Watson scandal. Some of those women received death threats and just significant backlash from fans. So, potentially coming forward, especially if you didn't know if other people were going to come forward, and, against a figure, again, who's as beloved as Tucker is, was really intimidating for them.
And Brenna, do we know why these alleged incidents stopped in 2016?
No, we don't know why. We are reporting on what we were told by the women. We don't know if there are additional incidents that are more recent.
And what would be the next step in a legal process? And what kind of charges, if any, could Tucker face for these allegations? And could any of these allegations be considered criminal?
We spoke to legal experts about what these potential next steps could look like. And they said there were some criminal statutes that maybe could apply to some of these allegations if proven true. But for the most part, unfortunately, all these allegations run up against the state's statute of limitations. And, in any event, these cases are rarely prosecuted. One expert did say that, in the event of a civil court case, the bar for success would also be quite high.
And Justin, what response did you receive and did our reporters receive from Justin Tucker, from the Ravens, and from the NFL?
Yeah, we reached out to Justin Tucker's team. We offered to speak with him, and what we received instead was a letter from his attorneys. They were saying that he denied all of the claims. They said that they sort of strained credibility, and that that people were speculating and taking things out of context, and that the claims also couldn't be proven. After we published, Justin Tucker did post a statement onto X. He said that these were innocuous or ambiguous interactions that were being skewed so far out of proportion that they're no longer recognizable, and that the story presents vague insinuations as fact. But he did add it was devastating for him to learn that anyone would feel that he was offensive in any way. We did reach out to the Ravens and the NFL prior to publishing. They declined to comment. After we published, they said that they were monitoring and would be looking into the matter.
And Justin, my final question, in a broader sense, in terms of publishing this story and investigating this, why do you think that this is an important story to bring to light and for us to have put forward?
At its basic level, it's about numerous women reporting very inappropriate behavior by a high-profile public figure that's never been brought to light before. These are serious allegations. The allegations are numerous. It's not just a couple people. We found 6 after a couple weeks of reporting. 2 businesses say they took the extreme measures to ban him from returning. That's highly unusual. These do date to some years ago, but we're reporting on what we know, and we don't know if there are additional incidents that are more recent.
I appreciate it. Justin Fenton, investigative reporter, Brenna Smith, investigative reporter, and Julie Scharper, enterprise reporter for the Baltimore Banner. Thank you all for joining me, and thanks for your work on this story.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Now, to help explain what these allegations could mean for Tucker's future with the Ravens and in the NFL, I wanted to bring in my co-host, Jonas Shaffer, who also wrote about this situation for the Banner. Now, Jonas, Tucker is one of the Ravens' most important, most popular players over the past decade plus. As a rookie, he helped the Ravens win their second Super Bowl title. He's a 5-time first-team All-Pro, a 7-time Pro Bowler. He's the most accurate kicker in NFL history. You see his jersey everywhere in Baltimore. But he also plays for an organization that says it takes off-field conduct very seriously. We are only about a decade removed from TMZ publishing a video of running back Ray Rice punching a woman who is now his wife in an elevator in an Atlantic City casino. In 2015, a year after the Ravens released Rice, then general manager Ozzie Newsome said the team would avoid signing and drafting players with any domestic violence incidents in their past. Now, I want to be clear that Tucker is not accused of domestic violence. But what have the Ravens said about their team policy in recent years, and how has that played out with their personnel decisions under general manager Eric DeCosta?
It's been an informal policy. I think it's largely guided how they make those roster building decisions, Paul. They haven't been a team that's invested significant draft capital or significant salary cap space in players with red flags like domestic violence incidents. It's also influenced how they talk about domestic violence incidents. In 2022, John Harbaugh was asked for his reaction to Deshaun Watson's 6-game suspension following accusations of sexual misconduct with massage therapists. He said that he respects what Steve Bisciotti has created in Baltimore and Dick Cass almost 10 years ago, referring to the follow-up from the Ray Rice situation. He also said, quote, basically, we're kind of zero tolerance. You have to know the truth. You have to try to understand the circumstances, but we've stayed away from that particular situation. When we draft players, when we sign them as free agents, we just haven't dealt with it. That's Steve's decision, and I'm glad that we have that policy, end quote. Now, Dick Cass, back in 2015, when he was the team president, said the Ravens did not have a zero tolerance policy with all player misconduct, and that the team was still going to be willing to take a second chance on players if they felt they deserve it. But we have seen the Ravens ball be willing to let the legal process play out with players big and small in recent years, even while they're on the roster or sometimes before it. Last January, before the Ravens run to the AFC Championship game, the team signed running back Dalvin Cook to their practice squad and later their 53-man roster. At the time, Cook was facing allegations from an ex-girlfriend that she was the victim of assault, battery, and false imprisonment at Cook's Minnesota home in 2020. Cook later said that he was, quote, the victim in this situation, end quote. And this past April, he settled that lawsuit with that ex-girlfriend. Also, this past winter, the Banner was the first to report that Baltimore County Police were investigating an alleged domestic assault involving Ravens wide receiver Zay Flowers. But Flowers remained eligible to participate in all team activities throughout the investigation, which police closed a couple weeks later without any charges. The NFL also later found that there was, quote, insufficient evidence, end quote, that Flowers had violated the league's personal conduct policy. And Paul, when I asked team president Sashi Brown at the NFL owners meetings in March last year about the team's zero tolerance policy, he said that there had been, quote, no change in terms of our philosophy and our approach, end quote. He also said that it was going to be a very complicated situation for the team, for the league that investigates it, and for law enforcement.
So that's on the Ravens side, but the NFL has their own personal conduct policy. It's a lengthy document, and it spells out how all the league employees, from players to owners to game officials, have to carry themselves. And it's relevant here because a player who has not been convicted of a crime or even charged with a crime can still be found to have violated the policy, quote, if the credible evidence establishes that he engaged in prohibited conduct, end quote. So, Jonas, how could the policy's provisions apply here?
Yeah, under the terms of that personal conduct policy, players can be disciplined if they're found to have engaged in conduct that poses a, quote, genuine danger, end quote, to the safety and well-being of others, or that undermines or puts at risk the integrity of the NFL. Now, the NFL does prescribe a 6-game unpaid suspension for some of the more serious violations of the policy. That includes a sexual assault involving physical force or committed against someone incapable of giving consent. That's relevant here because in the league's inquiry into allegations of misconduct against Watson, an investigator for the NFL defined assault in 2022 as, quote, unwanted sexual contact with another person, end quote. The NFL contended that Watson had committed sexual assault by allegedly touching his penis to these women without their consent. Sue L. Robinson, who was the arbiter jointly appointed by the NFL and the Players Association in Watson's case, found that Watson had, in fact, engaged in sexual assault as defined by the NFL against 4 therapists and was therefore in violation of league policy. We also saw in the wake of the Deshaun Watson case, the NFL changed its personal conduct policy to expand the offenses that warrant some of these more serious penalties to include sexual assault, quote, involving threats or coercion, end quote. We've also seen factors such as a pattern of conduct and offenses that involve planning, which could increase someone's punishment if they're found guilty and in violation of the personal conduct policy.
Now, in terms of Justin Tucker, the salary cap implications here. Tucker is under contract through 2027. He's got a salary cap hit of about $7 million for each of the next 3 seasons. If he were to be released this offseason, the Ravens would incur a $7.5 million hit in terms of dead money. And that's money that counts against the cap for players that are no longer under contract. And it would create just $445,000 in cap space. And this is all according to the salary cap website Over the Cap. Now, if Tucker were to be designated with a post-June 1 release, which helps to spread out the cap hit, the Ravens would limit his dead money charge in 2025 to $2.9 million and create $4.2 million in salary cap savings. Well, Jonas, thanks so much for joining us here on the Banner Ravens podcast. And of course, people can read more on the BaltimoreBanner.com. Subscribe to the Baltimore Banner, $1 for 6 months to get continuing coverage of this story. The link to this story will also be included in our show notes wherever you are listening. Please subscribe to the Banner Ravens podcast as well. And if you'd like to share information with a Baltimore Banner reporter about this story, you can get in touch by filling out a form at the bottom of the article. For Jonas Shaffer, I'm Paul Mancano.